Okay, so
You're on the
item 9, is it right?
yep 10-year plan. Lost my thing.
Hang on, so
We are up to
item 8, 188.
item 8.
So this is the 10-year plan. Okay.
You're right.
Hey, the cost wasn't going to.
Excuse me, mister. Are we able to start our engines? David and Sean, are you prepared to commence?
We are.
That's good.
I do.
So just to get started here, Rob's is putting up the motion. Who's seconding it, Rob? Councillor Angela?
Yeah, well, Angela hasn't seen the
What? Okay.
final draft.
We've got it ready to go?
Rob is really trustworthy. I'll just trust him.
She changed her mind earlier on this morning, so I'm not guaranteeing anything.
Open-minded.
So this is all the policies, this is not the 10-year plan, this is all the policies, the audit letter, and then your change.
Yes,
No, it is the 10-year plan.
the red part is my motion. The motion includes the red part, which is the add to what's in the staff recommendation. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Okay, and I'll move the staff recommendation as an amendment, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All right, so we'll hand over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just before we kind of get stuck into it, I just thought it would be useful just to talk a little bit kind of how we propose to run the process today and some of the documents that you've got in front of you or on OneDrive. So firstly, I think page 190 of the agenda, there's a diagram on there which talks about the process that we've followed so far. So this is the end of I guess a very long process. I know that Chelsea, who wrote the report, was very excited to be putting the hard line around the 28th of June box, and I guess that's the purpose of today is the adoption of the 10-year plan. So on the 31st of May and the 1st of June, Council made all of its decisions and changes on the budget, the 10-year plan. There were quite a few, and so staff, along with Audit New Zealand, have been working pretty furiously over the last few weeks to make those changes and get those reflected in the final 10-year plan document. I think it's probably worth just acknowledging at this stage the work of Audit New Zealand and Leon, Jared and Liz in particular, who are behind me. Leon will come up and talk in a second, but I just wanted to sort of thank them for their work with staff over the last few weeks. They have been weekends, evenings, everything. They've done an incredible job. In terms of the documents you've got in front of you, so the 10-year plan document that was distributed as part of the agenda. So you've got an updated version in front of you now, which reflects the changes from Audit New Zealand. So those of you that have a hard copy document, it's this one here. And that's got, I think the important probably point to note is that this has the audit opinion in the back of the document. So on pages 141 and 142, that's got the audit opinion from Audit New Zealand. Leon will talk to that briefly in a second. Also, you've got a document outlining the changes from the agenda version to the final version. So that's on OneDrive. It's also the hard copy document that looks like that. And so in this document there's one significant change which is in green. That's to do with that's on page 8 of this hard copy document. Right, I'll give you a second.
The document you're now referring to, show us again what it looks like.
So it looks like that on one side and that on the other side. So rather than do a track change version of the 10-year plan, we've written down all the changes in this document to make it clearer.
I have seen that, but I can't find it now.
Everybody got it?
Okay, so now having now found the document, I'm not going to go through the whole document now. Stephen will talk to that after Leon's said his piece. But there was one, just in terms of what this document shows, it's colour-coded. So the light blue are housekeeping matters essentially, and the green items, of which there's only one, is a more significant item that Audit New Zealand have asked us to make some changes. Yep, so they are all updated in the updated 10-year plan document you have. So this 10-year plan document should be final, other than Leon's signature, which once we adopt the 10-year plan today, he will allow us to drop his signature in, and that will be the final document. And so with that, I think hand over to Leon to talk to. I beg your pardon? Yes, yeah. That's part of the contract. He hand signs everyone.
Line up at the end.
What they'll charge. Whether you want to.
Sit here, Leon.
Thank you. Thanks.
Or maybe sit on that side.
I'll move it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Worship Councillors, for allowing us to speak at your LTP adoption meeting. Those of you who know me from Audit and Risk Committee meetings know I don't make long speeches, so I'll keep this short as well. So we've completed our audit of the long-term plan, and we're comfortable that it provides a reasonable basis for decision-making and accountability of the Council. We're also comfortable that the underlying information and assumptions are reasonable, and that the financial reporting and prudence regulations disclosures are complete and accurate. On that basis, I can issue an unqualified audit opinion. Sorry about that. We considered your savings that was highlighted just now by Sean, and found it to be ambitious but reasonable. And for that reason, we can issue the unqualified audit opinion on those as well. What we did decide to do is to add an emphasis of matter paragraph, just referring readers to your disclosure in your LTP, because of the uncertainty of timing of the savings and the extent of it. And that's what we've done in the opinion that you've got in front of you. This was a rather interesting audit and very specific to Hamilton City. And as already discussed, the timelines were really, really tight, and we had to work really well together without becoming friends, just to tell you that we keep our independence. And I also want to express our appreciation to your management and staff. I think they did an excellent job, especially the project management side of it. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Councillor Paula.
Councillor O'Leary. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of things. I was in the risk and audit meeting of a few weeks ago, and at that time, so I just want to get some final assurances. I see what you've put here in your matter of emphasis of matter assumption. At the time of the Risk and Audit Committee, there were 3 areas that you considered to be significant concerns. The first were, well, not in any particular order, development contributions. So we have now been told that since we made the amendment, which we just adopted, the 2 amendments that we just adopted in the previous item, you're satisfied that those risks are no longer material items, yeah? So
yep.
I can be assured that that is so?
Yeah, that discussion was around the consultation document and then the subsequent moving into the final LTP. And with the changes made in our audit work, we are comfortable that it doesn't significantly impact on our opinion.
Brilliant, thank you. The other one was around the one that you've just put in this paragraph around the savings. So what you're saying is that while you still continue to see these as very ambitious, even aggressive targets to reach, you're satisfied that with the business plan that has since been developed around that you can sit reasonably comfortable with that, and we just carry the risk as to whether those savings can be
Yes, Councillor, I
obtained.
think in the end...
I'm not trying to lead you here.
No,
that's
fine.
That's why I
in
stopped
the
short.
end, you will carry the risk, of course, of not achieving the targets, and you're quite clear on your LTP about the savings and that as well. And we had to get enough comfort, reasonable assurance. Remember, this is forecast information. This is a budget. These are not decisions or historical documentation. And I think that's important, and that's in the light that we audit long-term plans.
Yeah, so, so this may still be some political issues around that, but that's fine. On page 99 of the Risk and Audit Committee, I was just going back to the third one that was of concern to you, and that was around that you say consideration should be given to the operating structure and ownership of the theatre.
Yes.
And you recommended that legal advice would be support in terms of the reporting requirements and a new entity to establish the overseeing of the operations of the theatre. You haven't flagged it in here as a concern anymore, so that concern has gone away because...
Well, but basically because our recommendations stand. We still think when you get to the stage when you go through the business plan, which is obviously not part of the long-term plan, but when you get to that stage, make sure that you assess where the theatre should sit. How, if it's outside council and not the CCO, how are you going to protect your money, basically your ratepayers' money.
Okay.
And so you'll be raising that in the management report, will you, Leon?
It's already been raised. Yep.
So that's just a note then to council, so we need to keep that alive from your audit report as an action to keep going forward on, because that's all about the formal accountability of structures between Hamilton City and Momentum, and you are raising at least an orange flag around that to us, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I take it that this questioning at the moment is solely to Leon, and we'll have an opportunity to question about the financials. Okay, thank you. Look, Leon, thanks for your responsiveness over the last few weeks, because I do understand that there's been quite a lot of toing and froing and 11th hour work being done to meet the deadline for today, and it is very much appreciated of you and your team for meeting our deadline. Just in terms of the report, in your opinion, and this is on our page 141, there's 3 bullet points there where you say that the plan provides a reasonable basis for integrated decision making, that the assumptions and underlying forecast is reasonable, and that that in terms of our statutory requirements under the Local Government Act that we are complying with that. Are those points in that standard reports that would be in everyone else's audit report for a long-term plan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is very standard, very normal,
Yes.
and leads to that unmodified opinion that you've given us.
Yes.
Okay. Second question is around the emphasis of matter. Do we normally have one of these, or is this the first time in your time on council that we've had this, not on this particular matter, but in other areas where you've not gone, as I understand it, quite so far to modify the report, but you've expressed a lower level of concern in a particular area?
Councillor, from memory, I can't remember that we've ever added an emphasis of matter. However, over the last few years, you're probably just as aware of it, is that there's quite a focus on quality of audits from different boards across the world. I think there was quite a good report that came out of Australia. And part of this emphasis of matter, you can rest assured you're not the only council that had an emphasis of matter paragraph in your audit report this year, where it didn't happen in the past. I think Jared mentioned.
One for regional council, there's an emphasis of matter.
But across the country, there's probably 16.
Okay.
So it's not a bad thing. And I think I'll keep it short, but if you look at the Rolls-Royce report that came out, that was a few years ago, which was actually going to telling much more of a story than typical auditors being very conservative. So we're kind of moving out of our conservative headspace, trying to give readers of the accounts more assurance about what we do.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Just in terms of these savings, and to be fair, we've debated and re-challenged the CE a number of times over the last few weeks about being able to achieve this level of savings. Did you, in the course of that review, seek to get evidence as to how we might report going forward, whether or not we've achieved those savings or not, so that we kind of have if you like, a running total over the next particularly over the next 2 or 3 years, to see whether or not we're achieving any success,
yes.
Given that $94 million or $9 million average over 10 years can easily get lost in the OPEX, in the total of our OPEX and revenue costs.
Oh, absolutely. I think we had to get as much assurance as you can over forecast information and plans that are not set in stone yet. So what we did look at was, for instance, the vacancy factor or headcount management referred to, and what has been achieved over the last year, and will you be able to build on that to get further savings? We also looked obviously at the capex, capital expenditure savings, and are those reasonable? We can't say you will achieve it. Just as I think you said in your LTP as well, you will. You can't say you will, but you expect to receive to get those savings. And we had to look at why, especially your chief exec, was of the firm view that those savings are achievable. And based on that, we then went and have a look at other councils. And the only one actually you can compare yourself to is Auckland Council. And did they achieve savings with their capital work? I'm not going to talk too much about Auckland, but...
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Northland or Auckland?
North Auckland.
Oh, North Auckland, okay.
Sorry, Councillor, no, that was a joke. I was talking about Auckland.
Oh, okay.
Apologies.
I just didn't hear what you said.
Are we paying for that?
You get that one for free. So if I look at the alternative service delivery, and then of course the capital expenditure, which leads to the interest savings. These are the cash savings. I mean, then you've got the depreciation saving, which is the non-cash saving. We got enough assurance that we can say it is reasonable and not unreasonable.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Down.
Thank you.
You taking questions? Oh no, take questions of David and Stephen.
I'll just say something first, eh?
Yeah.
So I just want to speak to the changes report because it appears quite daunting, but it isn't quite as daunting as it looks. It's, all the blue stuff is very detailed, but essentially it's 8 changes that are listed on the front page, and then everything else is consequential to that. So there's the 4 capital changes listed on the front page, and then there's 4 operating expense changes, and then there's a consequential change to the finance costs, or the debt, and then the finance costs. And the way that our financial model works is every time we change interest, it flows through just about everything. And that's why there's so many pages of blue adjustments. It's largely a consequence of the interest changing and that flowing through all the fizzes of all the activities. So I just want to point out that while many pages appear quite daunting, it's actually only those 4 changes essentially making it. There's a couple of wording changes.
8 days, 8 hours to do it, right?
Yeah, and then the very back page was just a last-minute omission on my part, where we didn't change that table for the fact that we introduced the transition rate, and in doing so, we had to borrow, particularly in the first year, with a deficit of 10 million, which means we're funding some of our activities from borrowing. So that's essentially the gist of the changes. There's a few minor wording changes that are referenced in there, but I wouldn't bother mentioning them specifically.
Okay, are we in questions? Councillor Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of very minor questions for clarification. I'll work off the big agenda because, although I have checked with this one, page 215, and this is the funding statement for venues, tourism and major events. Can you just give me a simple explanation as to why such significant increases? And actually this is, I think, for most activities in the take from the rates. Like in year 1 it's sort of 7 million and it ends up to be, it seems a little bit larger than what I was expecting, sort of years 7, 8 and 9 and well into the 20 millions. Yeah, 215. If they were capital projects, I could
Well, no,
figure it out.
the increase in rates is simply 3.8% from every year thereafter. So if we looked at the whole of council FIS, and then as was pointed out by our speaker in the public hearing, so the rates increase is actually closer to 6% because of the addition of growth. And so the cumulative impact of that, which is essential to affording our capital program, that's just what it adds up to.
Okay.
Noting that it looks odd in 2018, 19, 19, 20 because we've got the unwinding of the transition in the targeted rate line below the general rate.
All right. I did sort of try and apply a 3.8, but it wasn't clean enough to figure that out. And just on page 217 in visitor attractions, down on significant negative effects, so you're attempting to manage some risk there for the future. I was questioning why the introduction of a possible introduction, because it's not off the table, of a fee to the Hamilton Gardens isn't included there, given we have two Hallworth reports saying that whatever the quantum of a charge, if it is included, may have negative effects. I just don't want us to take our eye off that. Can I have some comment?
There's no charge in the budget anymore, is there?
No, there's no charge in the budget, but there is a motion on the table that a charge may, if the development trust goes ahead, that they will look at it. So it is a risk that is there.
Yeah,
Are you talking about?
It's determined as important but not significant, so therefore it's not mentioned there.
Okay.
Given that we're in the budget.
But you haven't also budgeted for natural heritage sites that may be adversely affected. I mean, that's not it. You can't evaluate that into a quantum amount either. So, look, it's not hugely material. I just questioned it given that's there.
Okay.
Yeah. And just on page 218, just over the page, in years 3 forward, there's no targeted rate for the gardens, and that was in the motion.
Column numbers like that.
No, so in 2020 and 21, so year 3 of the new one, under targeted rates, we've got the first 2 years, and then there's no Hamilton Gardens targeted rate in there. Sorry. And I did look for it elsewhere, but I noticed that we've moved Hamilton Gardens into the category of visitor attraction.
Did you check in here?
Yes, I did, and it's not in
So
the
still not on
updated
there?
one. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I should have actually taken this offline because that's fairly significant, right? It's around
So I assure you the targeted rate is in the budget, but when we've done the cost allocation to the funding impact statements, it's been omitted from there.
So okay, is there time to find out perhaps if it's been put into parks and gardens? Actually, I should have looked at that. I think I might have looked at that. Yeah, targeted rates for parks and gardens ends at year 3 as well.
Isn't it?
Where's that?
It's on the one that the venues, tourism and amazing.
Definitely right the way through in note 2.
What's all that?
What's all that?
Yeah, that's where it
It's
is.
it's in venues, tourism, major events. There's nothing. There's no targeted rate there, is there? No.
So,
Page 215.
215. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Venues tourism. So that wouldn't be the correct rate either, would it? It would be, it was $10, if I can remember recall the motion, it was $10 plus $1.
Councillor Angela, can I come back to you to give Steve time to gather himself?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I'll go on to
Sure.
other questions.
Yeah, that's a
yes.
good idea.
Just And I just want to remind members that a lot of this information has been around for a long time. And apart from the changes, nothing has changed. So we,
I think it's gone into general rates, because if you look at it, there's a sudden jump.
yeah, I've just said apart from the changes, we have had this for a long time, apart from the changes, so. Councillor Robb.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Look, I've only got one question, and I'm a little bit embarrassed about raising it, but I think I should. It's on page 190, and it's under the audit and adoption process, paragraph 17, and it says there that the audit office feedback is expected on the 26th of July. I suspect that that is the 26th of June. So it might be a good idea to change that, because that could be misconstrued that we're actually approving something that we haven't had the feedback on.
I'm sorry, Councillor Robb, I missed the start of your comment. Could
Okay,
you just
paragraph 17 on page 190 refers to the audit office feedback expected on the
understand.
26th of July. It should be the 26th of June.
Thank you.
So I think historically, if that stays in there, it could be
It
misinterpreted.
could cause confusion, I agree. I'll check with the General Manager and we'll make that change.
That's my only question.
And Councillor Paula.
My question was around, just in terms of the capital adjustments, where some of the NZTA subsidies needed to be reclassified. One? Where it says, Audit New Zealand requested some of the changes the following out. Reclassification of NZTA subsidy. Some capital expenditure needed to be reclassified as subsidy. Does it make a difference if it's actual subsidy or potential subsidy? Because we can assume some subsidies, but we don't actually know we're going to get all the NZTA subsidies that we hope we will.
Yeah, so we haven't classified subsidies. There's an assumption in the significant forecasting assumptions that we get the NZTA subsidies that we're budgeting for.
So does the text support it being an assumption? I think it should.
Yes.
It does?
Yes, all NZTA subsidies are linked back to that assumption in the forecasting assumptions.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Angela, back to you.
Yeah.
Did you have another question you wanted to move on to?
No, no. Shall we break? It'll be somewhere. It'll be this. We have to.
Okay, we'll break till 12:25.
Should we get some pizza in? I'm hungry.
Yes, I'm on. I've got some pizza bases here.
Pizza bases.
Okay, Stephen, you're back on.
Stephen, please explain yourself.
Live stream, we're back on. Okay.
Right, to Councillor Angela's question with regarding the visitor attractions activity appearing not to have the Hamilton Gardens rate in it. She's quite correct. It's a wee little error. We've been carrying along all versions and it's finally been spotted. It's actually sitting in the parks activity, page 224 of the big agenda. First couple of years, of course, you've got the transition rate, and then what's left is the Hamilton Gardens rate increasing as resolved by $1 a year, taking it up to 1.4 million at the end of the 10 years. So we'll correct that, because although it's not material to the audit opinion, as Leon has confirmed to us, it's something we'll be reporting against for the next 3 years, and that will be a pain in the butt every time we have a meeting having to explain that. So we will get that corrected as part of this in the adoption, in the final adoption.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Ange?
Okay, so we'll now move to debate. Councillor Robb.
Sorry, just a question on that. Do we have to, does any resolution have to notify that we are making that small change?
No. We'll just do it. Unless you guys are completely and utterly against it.
Don't trust you, or...
No, if you're completely and utterly against it, we'll make the change.
Okay, so formally on the record, where is that kept? Does one of you two guys pick it up? Okay, right, thank you. Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm speaking in support of the motion, and before I do, I wish to thank the staff, and particularly those who have been working at the top of the tree over this journey we've been on the long-term plan. It has been a long journey, and for a reasonable number of the projects, we have had sufficient time to debate and consider, but disappointingly there have been some major projects that have come very much in at the last minute before the December deliberations, and I think that perhaps the lack of notice and lack of earlier discussion on those has been an issue. But look, over the last few weeks, I have, and Gary and I were fortunate enough to be to gain entrance into what's known as the bunker room on the first floor, where it was pretty reminiscent. If you've seen any of the recent Winston Churchill movies, it was very reminiscent of a true bunker room where they were preparing for D-Day, although I'd call it Audit Day perhaps rather than D-Day, and so there was good tension in there in the few weeks leading up to the outcomes that we've had and that we've received today, and in the audit report. So I'm congratulating the staff and as well as the audit team for getting that through. Why I've added the tagging onto Part D, and perhaps if I can just run through the reasons for that. I guess, and it's well known that I have a concern regarding the Audit New Zealand report. There appears to be information around council that this report had been received in early June, and that according to what appeared in the New Zealand Herald earlier this week, a response was made by council back to the audit office on Thursday the 21st of June, and I am concerned, given the lead up with the long-term plan, that perhaps we hadn't been a little more speedy in responding to the inaccuracies and otherwise that might have been in that report. And if the delays have been caused by an external party, I still share a concern that perhaps council hadn't informed us of the progress on this matter, given that one of the major decisions in this long-term plan is around the very facts and reasons why this Audit New Zealand report was being undertaken. There is now considerable public interest in the outcome of this report. If you look back at the submissions, the City Park was not favoured by a large number of submitters, and the stories that or the feedback I'm getting now is how much is this project going to cost? And if we drill down, the project itself, the full project, has not been costed, and we've had various figures put in front of us that suggest that it's about 15 million to do the project, but no one's really argued when $75 to $80 million has been suggested. So I think as a prudent council, we need to be going into this project with our eyes wide open and making sure that we're clear as to what the total project is going to cost, even if this $7 million is only the start of it. I think a lot more work has been done on the project than we're aware. I was given yesterday at a meeting with some residents a 16-page report on the park. Now, I haven't seen this report before in its entirety. I do remember seeing some of the pictures, but this is a report that has got Hamilton City Council's logo on it, so I assume that within the organisation there's been some work done on this park, but it seems highly probable that we as a group of councillors have yet to see that report. The property owners who I met with yesterday at their request have indicated that some elected members and have indicated to some elected members that there seems to be still a lot of wheeling and dealing going on with property owners and property developers in terms of endeavouring to buy properties for this. So what I'm suggesting in my amendment, and I think I've got 5 minutes, haven't I? Yeah. Sorry?
The 4 minutes was your...
Oh, was it? Okay.
And the last minute was your fifth.
Can I finalise then what I was going to say?
Wrap it up, yeah.
Really, the reason for the amendment is not to derail the long-term plan. It's not to take the $7 million away from the river plan, where it will stay, but it's to give us some time to receive the Audit New Zealand report and consider whether or not this particular project, which is $7 million, which is earmarked for the City Park, should in fact proceed in that direction.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I concur with Councillor Pascoe's comments about the LTP and in particular the tremendous work of the staff and this organisation to get to the point where we're at now, and it's a terrific amount of work, and that's great. I do part company with Councillor Pascoe when it comes to D, and I won't be supporting it because I think it's completely unnecessary. We've already had advice from staff, from the CEO this week, along the lines of that there isn't anything in the audit report that should impact on the LTP adoption today. The the recommendation which I successfully put during the deliberations, all that did was provide a funding allocation, a quantum of money for future use, and it does not give anyone authority to purchase properties. That was all it was. Any recommendations about specific properties purchase would come back to this council at a later date. So I regard it as quite unnecessary. And the original intent of my recommendation was related to properties on Victoria Street, simply because it gave us the strategic ability to do something better in that area to interact with the river. And it was my view, and it's still my view, that land banking in that area, the most strategic part of the whole city, is vital. We are a river city. One of our major tenets of our vision is to embrace that. And Victoria Street is our main street, running right alongside the river, and at the moment you can't see it. So that was certainly the intent of my recommendation, to relate to Victoria Street. And all this quantum of $7 million does is keep us in the game, so we don't get built out, so at some point we have a chance to utilise some of that land. So I will certainly be opposing this motion.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. So we're speaking about a lot of the whole plan at this point, aren't we? I would have liked to have asked if the resolution could have been taken in parts, but however, if that's not to be the case, I'm going to have to vote against it. You know, look, it would be very easy to grandstand on super low rates and go out there and say, I don't support any rates increases. I'd be a bit of a hero, very popular to many. Nice as that might be, I can't do that, but I also cannot support the large and unexpected rates increases in their present form. This plan tells us that over the last 6 years, work to look after existing and maintain existing facilities was put on hold, yet it tells us the finances were in good shape. It tells us a good job was done to reduce debt, and yet now we are aware that there is not enough revenue to fund everyday activities. Look, I acknowledge that the past council did an effective job to reduce debt, as it set out to do and said it would. But when we need more rates to fund everyday business, when we need more rates to look after existing facilities, when we need more rates to fund repayment of a huge government loan to open up a huge new growth area, we cannot truly describe ourselves as being in better financial shape. Last year, the Mayor announced a proposed rates increase of 16%, and we were all a bit struck by that. Since then, it's moved around a bit and landed where it has today. But no wonder our community is confused. No wonder it lacks confidence in the council. Many people have told us they're worried because they simply don't believe they can afford to pay what they're being asked to pay in the short measure. People have told me that they feel this council has broken promises that it made 3 years ago in the first 3 years of this 10-year plan, which was to transition to capital value over 10 years. And I can't help but agree with them on that. The plain truth of speeding this up is that many ratepayers, as we are all aware and been told, will see increases well above 9.7. I was hugely disappointed when I was new on this council to find Waterworld in such a rundown state. The Founders Theatre was of course closed, and there are river paths that have not yet been fully repaired. Libraries in desperate need of renew and refresh, and some of our facilities being so tired and old, not really fit for a fabulous city of our size, let alone a growing one. And there is limited money to build new community assets in this budget. Such as another pool, such as some turfs, playing turfs, some sports facilities, etc., new parks and playgrounds. But apparently we can find money to fund a brand new idea around a Central City Park. And for those reasons, I support Councillor Pascoe's comment on the Central City Plan. A resident yesterday gave me also a set of pictorial plans for the river like this. Not some I've seen, not all of which I've seen, that set out a vision and an approach for the Central City Plan. And I haven't seen all of these, I promise you that. But anyway, they look lovely. I just don't understand what $7 million was going to buy us. There was no business plan, and it would be normal to go ahead with a vision, a strategy and a business plan before we were to agree to the money. I'd love to see, by the way, Councillor Taylor, I support you in saying that Victoria Street needs some love and care. It does. I'm disappointed. Some councillors talk of being wise with ratepayers' money, but there was no support for a very, very small reduction in the massive transport budget of 678 million, twice that of the cost of water supply, 3 times of that of what went into community facilities.
It was 440 million.
I'm reading off the report. Can I continue in my time, please?
That was the motion to move 15% from the 440 million.
Okay, you can move on.
That takes my time when people interrupt.
Hang on.
However, I didn't see very much flexibility in finding some changes from transport. In fact, it was a bit naughty. People suggested I pick out some safety projects I didn't want to do. I wasn't happy about that. Pleased to see the increase to community grants. We are no longer the second stingiest council in New Zealand. And I've had to fight all the way for small sums into the libraries, for parks, for the zoo, community events and community grants, and I've had some success, and I'm happy about that. I've never shied away from rates increases over the 17 years I've been in politics, and I accept that sometimes things change and cities do need money to develop and thrive. However, I spoke strongly not against no rates increase, but I spoke for a much slower transition to capital value. Not totally happy with the uniform annual charge either. I've been quite transparent about that. And for lower rates that allow for progress, I do not accept what I've heard from some of my colleagues, which is let's do a big hit this year and return to a smaller hit in election year. It's not about that. And so, sadly, I find myself in the position of voting against the plan in total if I have to vote against it in one hit like that.
Councillor Angela.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Okay. Councillor Dave.
So I moved to point. There is seriously a problem if someone moves a point of order and then they get removed off the speaking thing.
So I think when there's a point of order, don't push your button. A point of order takes precedence over anything, so you just speak it out, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Angela. Look, Paula was right about one thing. The last council did let last 2 councils let community assets run down. Probably went back further than that, to be truthful. But she's not right about much else, in my opinion. And it's ironic that I supported almost every one of her proposals for improvements in community services and facilities, and always have on this council. Yet she wanted to cut $66 million from the transport improvement budgets. I got the general manager in charge of that, about to go out into another area, to send me yesterday some information that some councillors saw a few days ago, which showed that Hamilton has congestion through the day almost as high on average across all the roads in the city as Auckland does, a fraction behind, worse than any other city in New Zealand apart from Auckland, and except in the morning peak, worse even than Auckland. That's something that we need transport improvements budget for. That's one of the reasons why I support what we've got there now. One of the other bits of information I got Chris to send me too was another graph showing the terrible effect on safety for vulnerable road users that high speeds have. That's also an area that we're concentrating on to try and make our roads and transport systems safer. I make no apologies for asking on behalf of our Growth and Infrastructure Committee for $440 million to spend in that area. It should ideally be more if we really want to fix some of those problems rather than just hold the line, which I suspect is all we're going to be able to do. But I'd also like to thank the staff for the work they did. I've been through a few LTPs, and this is by far the best support that elected members have had during the process of any that I've seen. So thanks, David, and all the other staff, and Richard, everyone for that. I've never been a fantastic fan of the river plan, as people know, or the Central City Park for that matter, but council voted for that 7 million there through a torturous process, and I'm going to support the amendment to put that in there. But I am going to say that Councillor Rob has got a somewhat elegant, not quite as elegant as the last one I like, but a somewhat elegant solution to that. He's not opposing his motion does not oppose the $7 million being left on the table, and it still could be used for the Central City Park once the issues of the Audit New Zealand thing have got out of the way. That's still possible. So if the amendment loses, I'm going to support the motion because I think that will enable the possibility of the LTP to remain intact, which I think is important at this stage. I want to say one other thing. One of the other challenges to our council by people in the community was cut some of your costs. Don't just go around increasing costs and expenses all the time. Well, we did that with the support of the Chief Executive. We cut our running costs by $94 million over 10 years. You all saw the figures 2 days ago. I think that's a much more responsible thing to do than try and cut road safety and public transport expenditure like Councillor Paula tried to do.
That is not correct and was never inferred by me.
So,
$66 million from the transport budget.
Stop. Could we stop the clock? What is your point of order?
That is incorrect. I have no time allocated savings to...
So your point of order is on accuracy.
It is incorrect that he infers I said that.
Excuse me, Councillor Paula. I just asked for the point of order. I didn't ask for an explanation.
You need to understand
Excuse me,
my
Councillor
point of
Paula,
order,
please be
Mayor
quiet.
Andrew.
Councillor Porter,
Stop treating people like children and
I'm
just
asking
listen.
for the point of order. I'm not asking for the explanation. I was in the room.
You have my point of order.
Please continue.
Thanks. Councillor Paula's motion would have, if it had passed, have the effect of cutting $66 million from the transport improvements budget, which covered safety, alternative modes of transport and congestion. I rest my case, Your Honour.
Councillor Angela.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. We've all won and lost particular things that are important to us, and I agree with Councillor McPherson. this has been an incredible, actually it's been a long and very robust LTP. I've lived through several of them as well. I want to start by thanking the governance manager and her team, the CE and his team, and in particular David and Sean, our general managers, and their team who have led and delivered this budget over, goodness, the last 2 years actually. We have not always agreed on every point, but I recognise that you have all actually lived and breathed every moment of this budget, and I are very appreciative of that. It's certainly been one of the toughest that I've been through personally, but I know it's been tough for all elected members, and it's been challenging as the city looks to address some incredibly huge things like the growth and the future of our city. However, in my mind, I cannot forget that this will also challenge many of our residents, particularly those on low and fixed incomes, and I worry about those people. The growth predictions and the massive capital project facing us over the next 10 years does concern me. I would like nothing more than those assumptions and those predictions of our future to be as bright as they can be and to be right. However, I think that this budget will stretch the city far beyond what she is capable of affording. It is time to move on, and as each project in this budget comes forward, I will continue to work very hard towards getting the very best outcome for the city at every turn and every decision, as I know everyone in this chamber will. I will remain an advocate for the people that I serve. I will continue to champion for those people the best outcomes. I will always stand up for those people, and I will always do what I think and feel is right for the city and those people.
Thank you. First, I'll just address the amendment versus the motion scenario. And I just want to, and I think Rob did articulate it right, that what we've done is placed basically a placeholder of $7 million in our 10-year plan. there is nothing will happen until a full due diligence has been done on any proposal to purchase property. So I think, and I don't want to use the word wrong, but some of the hysteria that's going on around this figure is unnecessary totally, because there's no targeted building, there's no project yet that this is, so there's a huge amount of work to be done before that money gets spent at all. So I think that's why I'm comfortable with the amendment, not so much the motion. Paula was talking about more rates, and that's how it's panned out. But we did have the opportunity to go less expenditure, but we very early on in this process decided not to do that. I've stuck to my guns and done very poorly in terms of trying to swing the majority over to cutting some costs. And look, I totally understand we all have different views upon what the role of the City Council is. You know, I have a smaller, more focused on core infrastructure. Others have a much wider understanding of the brief, their responsibility, and that's what the world's all about. Unfortunately, I lost most of those battles. I'll keep fighting them. And I just want to give members a bit of a heads up on how we, and I said this the other day when we were here, that just if we were prepared to live without a CBD library, to live without an eyesight, and to start charging for parking back in the town, that would be $84 million across the 10-year plan. That's not inflation adjusted. And it comes down to a lot of the, we'd love to, it'd be neat if we could have free parking. It would be neat if we had a free CBD library. It'd be neat if we had it. But the value to the ratepayer, the ratepayer and the resident, I see myself as an advocate for them, you've got to ask, what sort of value do they get out of those things? They're not using those things. They're not, and even if they are using them, you ask them, would you rather have your rates cut or have to go on your iPhone to read a book or go out to the Chartwell Library? Yeah, it just concerns me. And just one thing to finish off, and this is the thing that gives me a little bit of comfort, that very shortly we will be going through, we'll end our 10-year plan process, and very shortly, and I hope Richard starts nodding his head when I say this, we'll be going through an annual plan review process where everything's up for grabs again anyway. I'm not too sure if the process, when that process starts, and when it does, subject to an item not being of a substantial matter, we can change all sorts of things in this. If we don't like the taste of what we decide today. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you so much, Mayor Andrew. Look, it's been a challenging 18 months and to get to this 10-year plan, and I found the whole process, like I mentioned a number of times, not very helpful to making a real good decision for our ratepayers. I felt talked to, last-minute items thrown at me, massive amounts of reading at short notice, and steered in some direction with an agenda. So, and I just wonder whether that was are we really listening to our ratepayers, or just pushing things through? But nevertheless, I do agree with Councillor Leary, what she says, that it's time to look ahead. I'm looking for more real discussions, not talk to, and we need to keep remembering it is about the people, it's about our ratepayers with every decision we make. Do we do the best for them? Because in the end, they're the people in our city, and if we don't do the right thing for them, what kind of city are we going to have? And lastly, I just want to thank the staff too. I mean, incredible amount of work you've done, and I know you've tried to make it as easy as possible for us, but man, it was still challenging, especially when you're first time in here. But I thank you all for all your support and help along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you all know, the Council's means of raising money is fairly binary. It's rates and or development levies. And I find it rich that Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Siggy talk about standing up for the ratepayer, and yet both voted down the increase in developer levies, which is one of the significant complaints and issues raised by ratepayers shouldering the burden of those developers.
Go to the traditional way. First of all, I want to thank the staff, and I don't agree with Councillor Henry on this. You've done a fantastic job. You have been available and so helpful around the clock, and we are blessed. We are blessed.
Accuracy. Accuracy. Oh, sorry, that's all.
I just want to hear your points of order. I don't want your explanation afterwards, okay?
No, I didn't say, I just
Okay,
said accuracy.
so exactly what are you proposing was inaccurate?
Councillor, Deputy Mayor Gallagher said that he didn't agree with me that that the staff hadn't done a good job, but I said they had.
Okay, so accept your point of order, so...
I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. I certainly didn't... What's wrong with these, Mike?
I think she meant to give you a hearing aid.
No.
Okay.
I think so.
I object. I certainly
Okay,
didn't.
quiet, please.
I
He's armed and
certainly
dangerous.
didn't feel I was talked to, and I respectfully differ. I felt that I was embraced and given respectful advice, and I felt that staff were incredibly helpful. Local government is a very complex being, and it does require huge work, and I respect that. Can I also just say that I don't agree with Councillor Southgate's cuts to transports. I believe her motion meant savage cuts to our transports. I do believe that would have been really injurious to the infrastructure in the city, with respect. I just want to also quickly outline why I'm supporting the amendment, but if the amendment loses, I'll of course support the motion, that I think we have to be very careful when we're talking about the audit report, and we must be very careful while we're under qualified privilege around this council table. We must be very careful not to unduly or by accident malign personal reputations. The issue with regard to Victoria Street property purchases solely and only a budget allocation at this point. The detail of the proposed purchase will go through all the processes and will come back to this chamber. And I'm crystal clear, as Jeff Taylor has said, those purchases are to look at some strategic property to buy and hold, and where necessary to preserve the heritage aspects of those properties. I'll give you a really good example historically of Hamilton East, where we had a beautiful Art Deco hotel. We had a beautiful, lovely wall and trees across from that Riverina Hotel. We had, of course, the lovely Euphrates House down the road. And council had great aspirations for the Hamilton East precinct, but it had no skin in the game because it had no strategic property hold. And of course, what's happened in Hamilton East is a historic tragedy of momentous proportions, which involves short-sightedness in many ways. And sadly, this council, because it didn't own some strategic properties, was not in the play. Please do not let this happen to Victoria Street in terms of its heritage aspects. You can be the beautiful Parnell of the Waikato, or you can be someplace like Johnsonville with a Kentucky Fried Chicken slap bang in the middle of Victoria Street if you do nothing. And council is about vision and about looking ahead, and I've been immensely disappointed with respect to some members, because I honestly don't feel you've got how crucial it is to preserve that Victoria streetscape and preserve the links to the river. I also want to make the point that if we look at the summary document, get rid of that. I won't say I'll never stand again, but never mind. To get the summary document, you know, people have said that this budget is not a people-friendly. Well, have a look at the incredible people-friendly projects. the Whaiwhakariki Park development, the Rotatuna Sports Park, the Sportsfield Drainage, the Waikato Regional Theatre, the Rotatuna Neighbourhood Parks, the zoo and Whaiwhakariki entrance, the Haripuki Sports Park, the playgrounds policy, the social housing fund which the Mayor has vigorously promoted, trying to pay our staff, getting something close to a living wage. And you know, can some of you just once acknowledge that this Mayor is the first and the only Mayor that put up a funding for a Rotatuna Community Centre and Library just once? Be nice. Say, good on you, Andrew. No other Mayor has done that, and now under this Mayor's leadership we're doing that. We can have democratic debate, but please be gracious in some of the things that I think you would all agree that this Mayor has done right. Finally, I want to also say, under Julie Hardacre, we had to make a tough decision about an 8% rate increase. It was tough. Unanimously, from the best of my recollection, including members here who were on the council time, we supported Julie's leadership. In this case, I think we have to make a very tough and hard decision. People will also say, and this is my final point, about a rating transition, and it was too quick. We started that debate way back in 2013. It got hooked up on the proposal to remove the differential between commercial and residential, so it went nowhere for 3 years. We then started the 10-year transition, and all we're doing is, and I realise that there'll be some legitimate views, we are shortening that 10-year transition to 6 years. That's not necessarily unreasonable. What is totally unreasonable is a rating system that currently is grossly unfair.
Deputy Mayor, just wrap it up there,
just,
please.
yeah, one sentence. Why is it unfair? Because you have people in lesser value properties, paying substantially, in some cases, more rates than people in higher value properties. We obviously want to move more quickly to a fairer rating system, allowing for a transition and impact. Finally, I think this is a people budget. It is a tough budget, and it is a budget that I believe, will set the scene for very good growth and development to make our city one of the most attractive in New Zealand.
And just one thing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Only a minute.
This is Hamilton's Fix-It budget. This is about growth, building a city to fix and make good on the promises that have been made for 30 years and 10 councils. This is about fixing and looking after what we have, our pipes that are full to capacity, and our roads where we need to lower congestion and alternative transport modes. And this is about building a city that we can all be proud of and show off to our visitors. Fixing our reporting in a way that doesn't include all development levies as income is further in line with central government's expectations. I want to thank staff. I want to thank the Chief Executive. Particularly, I feel he's become a target through no fault of his own. I want to thank my family and my faith, who I have lent on through this long process. This plan is about calling the past into the present. And it's not by might nor by power, but as our Kamatua Tame said this morning, it's by the Spirit of God. Back to you, Rob, for right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I've just got a couple of points that I just want to pick up on some comments from elected members. Councillor Mallett used the word hysteria in terms of the audit issue, and I think that is a very poor and incorrect description. What my concern has been, and it's clearly documented in almost everything I've said, is that there has been poor process over the delivery of this report, the timing of it, and even notice from Council as to why the report was in fact being delayed. I would say, and I would say this in response to comments made by Councillor Taylor and Deputy Mayor Gallagher, that this report suggests a lot more has been done about the Central City Park than most elected members around this table are aware of. And the use of the word wheeling and dealing, which I used before, Councillor Mallett took some umbrage to, is probably a very good description because it's still going on now, and I wouldn't be surprised if the $7 million that's been earmarked has already been earmarked for specific buildings and that discussions are going on with those. Deputy Mayor Gallagher raised about the Rototuna Town Centre, and while I do endorse and support the Mayor's enthusiasm with this project, Deputy Mayor Gallagher's comments are quite incorrect because this particular project dates back to at least 2010 when the project first came on the table and we talked about, or you then talked about the development of the town centre and including a community hub and library there. So,
okay, excuse me, just can we stop the clock, please? What's your point of order? Your point of order. I don't want to hear
the item was unbudgeted.
No. What is your point of order?
The point of order is incorrect information.
Thank you. So accuracy.
Accuracy in terms of the...
Stop. I don't want to hear the explanation.
From me?
No, I don't want to hear the explanation. So, yes, I do rule in favour of what his Deputy Mayor has said.
What?
Thank you. You can continue.
Okay. Certainly, in recent hearings in recent briefings we've had, it was made quite clear to me that the decisions around the Rototuna Town Centre were made in 2010. And I just want to make a comment about, I really do hope, as the Mayor says, this is a fix-it budget, but I very much doubt that it is. If you go back to 2012, we had an 8 or a 9% rate increase, which was then supposed to be the fix-it. It hasn't been the fix-it. And I really have concerns, and I think that has been raised in the matter of emphasis as to how we will go forward, and I certainly will be working closely with management if they allow me to do so, so that we can accurately report the spend on maintaining our assets, as we've promised our community we will do, how we will show these efficiency savings that we've put pressure on the Chief Executive to do over the next 10-year plan. So I hope it just doesn't drift into a situation where in, 5-6 years' time, we're faced with exactly the same as we were faced with, or as the council then was faced with in 2012 to bring in a major rate increase to normalise what's necessary to fund the operation of the city. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote. No more speaking, please. No more speaking, please. So we're going to the board to vote. We're voting on the motion. So, sorry, we're voting on the King Gallagher motion. Sorry. We're voting on the King Gallagher amendment.
We're just reading set in the system. Is it already set, team?
Yep. King Gallagher
Exciting.
The motion is carried 7-4-6 against.
So
Sorry, the amendment is carried 7-4-6 against.
Amendment now becomes a substantive motion, so we're now voting on the motion, the King Gallagher motion.
The amendment as a substantive motion is carried 10-4, 3 against.
So just before we go any further, I just want to do two things. One is hand over to Richard, and then I also want to hand over to Leanne to explain the points of order, because there seems to be a misunderstanding there. So we'll just hear from the democracy manager, but we'll hear from Richard first.
Yeah, so first I'd like to acknowledge the thanks from the elected members to staff. The staff have worked extremely hard through this 10-year plan process, and it has been an enduring legacy almost for about 12 to 18 months for some people. So firstly, the finance team and the strategy and comms team have done a significant amount of work and greatly appreciated. But I'd like to, there's some superstars that have been involved in this, and I'd like to acknowledge Chelsea Stewart for the great work she's done in project managing this. And when I say superstar, it reflects the fact that we don't do anything easy in this place. We change things around so many times, and she's still here with us, so that's a great testament to her resilience. And also like to thank Sarah Wilson and the finance team as well for the great work. She stepped up as well. And I want to thank Stephen again. Don't give him the clap because he gets paid enough. So, but Stephen Halliwell as well has not only brought to us a high degree of horsepower in terms of getting things done, but his intellect has gone a long way in terms of getting us where we are today. So, Stephen, thank you so much. And finally, I said he didn't deserve getting the clap, but anyway. And finally, I just want to acknowledge, you guys probably don't realise how big a problem we are. Elected members changing things, staff stuffing things up from time to time, fixing things up from time to time, how much effort the auditors and patience the auditors have had with us. And it's been thanked by David and by Sean previously, but I'd just like to reiterate it. If it wasn't for their resilience, patience and working long weekends because of us, we wouldn't be here today. So Leon, Liz and Jared, thank you, and thank you to your teams. Finally, two teams that have made a big difference is the DC team, who have headed off, they've probably gone to a DC conference. And the other aspect is, I think, the other thing that I just want to thank Leanne and the governance team, and the reason I'm thanking them is we don't get these things easy and make them straightforward, but when you do see them, they always look slick and polished, and that's because it goes through a great filter, which is Leanne's team. So thanks, Leanne. Cool.
Okay, just hand over the democracy manager.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Points of order are covered in standing orders, and I thought it might be helpful just to clarify exactly how they should work in a meeting. If a member has a point of order, you should articulate the point of order, and those points of orders are set out on page 48. They include that the matter is not subject of discussion before the council, so irrelevancy, effectively, that standing order.
The things that you can cause
there are specific categories of points of order, and only they may be raised. Okay, so effectively irrelevancy, that the discussion on the matter is not in front of council at the moment. A breach of standing orders, misrepresentation of any statement, which we often construe as accuracy. It is essentially the same.
So misrepresentation mean the same?
Yes. Yes, it's framed as misrepresentation, but if the person is attributing something to you that is inaccurate, then it's a point of order that you're entitled to make. A request that words be objected to in the minutes, and that's a whole other thing we'll discuss another time. Disorder and the use of disrespectful, offensive or malicious language. So the point of order was made, at which point the chair will ask for an explanation if he or she needs to hear it. At that point, the chair will rule. The chair must rule on a point of order, and his or her ruling is final.
So what was happening today, Andrew was saying, what's your point of order?
Your point of order is misrepresentation.
Yes, the person should say the category, so it's a misrepresentation and then stop.
I don't have to hear it because I've been in the room. So I don't have to. I don't want somebody debating with me about why they feel it was wrong. I heard, and I can make a rule.
So I think I think the members were missing that first step and just saying, oh, he's telling
Yeah,
No,
I
but-
didn't say that.
But then members were moving on and going into debate about convincing me about it. I don't have to do that. I was in the room, so I just make my ruling.
Fair enough.
So hang on, this isn't a briefing, so maybe we can continue with this on a briefing.
Standard headings and some good explanations so we can pull them out when we need to use
Put them
them.
up, we can put them up behind us. Okay,
Oh,
look,
okay.
look, I really don't think this is an appropriate time for us to be going into this. It was just a quick overview to explain why we were faltering there a bit. But we do have to move on before lunch with our final vote. So we're moving now to page 553, item 9. So I'll move, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. We'll take the item as read, but anything further you'd like to ask to add?
Could you make sure you clarify to the elected members the exact nature of the resolution so they're aware of what they're moving and seconding? It's the full gambit.
It's on page 188.
Yep.
No, sorry, it's on page.
So if I may, Mayor Andrew, so we sent an email out shortly after the agenda went out last week, and you have a copy with you today of the updated resolution. Effectively, this page replaces page 553 in your agenda.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the resolution is everything from item 6, general rate, through to 65 on page 558 where it says end of resolution. This is a normal process we go through when we set the rates. It includes all of the rates that we set, and this has to be consistent with the 10-year plan that we've just adopted, and it is. So it's just a formal confirmation that allows the team to go and set the rates next week.
Okay, Councillor Paula.
Really? Oh, no, I have no question.
Okay, so we'll move to debate. So this is moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Paula.
One very short statement, just to pick up on something that I said in the previous item. I do understand the financial constraints of the city, the financial challenges, and I accept and appreciate all the support that staff have given us over this journey since the large 16% rates was increased and was proposed, and I'm pleased that we've been able to work through a lot of those issues and reach a solution. The only reason I'm voting against this is not because I don't believe that we don't need a little bit more revenue in the city. Could I accept that? It's just a little bit too far, too fast for me. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Obviously, this is, in a sense, a very unpleasant duty because no one likes to have to vote for a very severe, particularly in the next year, and also make the point that there is an assumption that the 3.8 carries on, and I think in terms of our rating system in this country that can't be. We can't forever and a day be increasing the general rate in excess of inflation, so I think there is a point where we do reach some critical issues, and that's what local government has to work with central government on. Obviously, the whole point of a petrol tax is to actually give ratepayers relief, in my view, in terms of the transport proportion of the budget. The idea of GST back on rates will be good. What I am going to say sincerely, and this is not in any way intended as a personal reflection on any member in this chamber, but with vigour, I'm going to ask members in their public office to put up their alternative. It is so easy to be the hero and vote against this motion. Easy, easy. But people are not stupid, and people want to know what the alternatives are being proposed. And with respect, I respect there was rigorous debate around particular projects, for and against, and I get that. But I haven't yet heard anywhere at this point what an alternative approach would have meant. What an alternative approach would have actually meant. And I've had no member say, well, instead of 9.4, we should be 3.8, and then we cut this, and this, and we live in deficit funding for X years longer. That's my recollection. This is not a personal affront to anyone, but if we're going to get into this debate, into this discussion, I do want credibility. That's my personal view. And there are people around this table who are very sceptical about aspects of this budget. And I respect that, but ultimately they are exercising the role of governance and having to deliver a decision in the end.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I'd just like to reinforce what Deputy Mayor said, but also, and there might be some inaccuracy here, so don't quote me in case you want to point of order me, but if I'm not mistaken, the initial proposal proposed by the Mayor was an 18 or 19% one-year increase and an immediate transition to CV and UAGC. Councillor Paula put forward an amendment which changed that rates increase to 9.5 over 2 years with an immediate transition to UAGC and CV. We now have only a one rates increase at 9.7, so 0.2%.
Point of order, that's not correct, that to attribute that to me. I think you'll find that's incorrect.
It was your motion? Were you a seconder?
Okay, stop. I rule in favour of...
Okay, thank you. I accept your ruling.
Point of order.
Yeah, like I said, to take that back, but I do believe you voted for that motion to slow down the transition, and this.
That's also correct. You just stick to what you know you voted for.
Excuse me, Councillor Paul, I don't want to hear the explanation.
So I just struggle with this when we now reach a compromise of compromise, and we've got a one-off rate and we've got a transitional CV and UAGC, and it just reinforces Deputy Mayor's thing. This thing's going to go ahead, and I just feel that some members are voting against it to posture for other reasons.
Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I wasn't going to debate because this item here is about how we are legally required to set the rates. So every member in this chamber needs to support this motion. I have not indicated at all, because I haven't spoken, that I wouldn't be supporting this motion. You know, I've been here for a long time, and I completely reject Councillor Hamilton's comment indicating or implying that any elected member may postulate. We all have different views. There's 13 different views around this table in this chamber, and it's been that way in my 11 years. And if I recall the last 10-year plan, there were a group of councillors against that 10-year plan for their reasons, and that included, as we went through that journey, Mayor Andrew and the Deputy Mayor. That's politics, folks. That's how it works. But personal attacks on individual elected members should never be tolerated, and I push back on that. We are legally required before the 1st of July to set the rates, and I am going to take that position, and that shouldn't even be in question. I'm really disappointed at some of the comments in the chamber.
Councillor, no, you can't. Councillor Dave, what's your process question?
Understand if that's in fact correct, and I'm legally obliged to vote for this.
Excuse me.
Is it legal? Is what Angela has said about my needing to support this because of legal reasons correct?
Stop. We're in the middle. We're in the middle of debate, and you need to understand before we got to this stage what you're voting for. Okay, that's your job as an elected member. Now we need to move on. Councillor Dave.
Thanks. I want to follow up some of the things said very eloquently by the Deputy Mayor. In fact, he's given 2 great and entertaining speeches today. He's definitely on top of his form. He's looking forward to the holiday in a couple of days. One thing I want to say that he touched on is the separate methods of funding that we really need to start looking at. And I've seen in the last year and a half, in fact, even when the last government was in, our Mayor and our CEO and other senior staff working really hard with both governments to try and nut out alternative funding sources so it didn't all fall on the ratepayer. And I think we're all aware that if we, like Martin said, if we keep going like we are, something's going to break. It's not possible to keep lumbering the ratepayers for all of those infrastructure costs, for all of the development costs. And this council has worked harder than any other one I've been on to try and work out a way to get around some of them within the ridiculous at sometimes constraints that we have. We haven't successfully got round it all, but as Ryan pointed out, we've actually cut our cloth quite a lot from the original propositions. And while he might have had the move of the motion's name wrong, it's essentially what he was talking about. We cut it to the point of the final draft, we cut it again considerably afterwards, and we found savings. We didn't just find things that we weren't going to do, we found savings in things we were already doing. So I think we have acted pretty responsibly. And also to what Martin said, it's all very well to use social media to attack decisions and actions by council and statements by council and councillors. You have every right to do that, but morally you also have a responsibility, like he said, to put up an alternative. Put up the alternatives and let's have a debate about them, and then people will respect the people that are saying that quite a lot more. One of the things that Angela said when she spoke is actually quite correct, and I thank her for saying that. Our job now with this motion is to strike a rate to give effect to the decisions that are already made. You could vote legally against striking a rate. Then we would have to go back to the old rate that we had for at least 3 months. That would cost the city millions of dollars. And that would be on the heads of the people that voted against striking a rate at all. You're not legally required to vote for it, but you better think about the consequences if you don't.
Councillor Robb.
Thanks. Look, I'm speaking in support of the comments that both the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dave have made. I think the elephant in the room is the fact that we are so dependent on rates and no other main source of income. And I don't know whether members ever read the 85-page document that I think I've sent around twice in this term from Local Government New Zealand, where they did a discussion paper in 2015 about alternative forms of finance. Internal forms of funding local government, but I still don't see much of an appetite for change. We might have an appetite for change around this table, but when you see things like wanting to reduce copper in car brake pads being one of the major remits, and look, I'm not running that one down, but as one of the major remits at next month's local government conference, and I'm not running that down because there are issues with that, but you know there are some bigger issues, and you know that's around whether we should be getting our GST back, whether we should be being able to bring a user pays tax like similar to the regional fuel tax and so forth. All of these hurt, but in a way they provide us with those funding streams that take the emphasis away from pillaging and raping our ratepayers every time we need more money to run the city.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. And I say this with all generosity to Rob, that he just perfectly encaptured the problem that all we ever do is look for streams of revenue. We need to balance our books, and we need to get there somehow. We need to get there by raising revenue or cutting costs. And 90% of the discussion that goes around the table is about, aren't we so poor old little government, poor old regional government, we can't get our money from this, we can't get some money from that. We just got to cut our costs. And there are tons and tons of things, services that we are providing that are not providing the value that we are charging for them. Now, the fact that we do most of our charging via rates means that the people who are consuming these services that we're providing don't actually get a proper, accurate cost of the provision of the service, so they just keep on using it. But and like I said in my banned chairs report, this, and Rob I think raised it the other day, just before, this will come back again. We will be facing this in 3 years' time, I guarantee you, because we won't address our costs. But I will vote for this because I do know that we have a moral and a legal obligation to do that. It's our responsibility. But guys, we've got to look at the expense side. We've got to look at our spending side, and there's a hell of a lot of stuff there that we're providing that is just not good value for money for what we're charging our ratepayers. And we just need to be a little bit braver and be prepared to have a couple of angry people turn up and listen to them, and they'll be angry, but they're not going to be anywhere near as angry as the ratepayers are when we come back again in 3 years' time and say, oops, we flopped again. Thank you.
Cool. May I just understand?
Yeah.
Are we still in debate?
Sorry?
Are you still debating? Or can I ask a question? Permission to ask a question of democracy. I'm really honestly not trying to be difficult. I just want to make sure. I have heard the debate of other people. I want to make sure, am I obliged to vote for it? Look, I'm happy to vote for it if that's the normal procedure. It's different to what I've been exposed to in the past with regional councils. So I just want to make sure where I'm at.
Look, there is no obligation on you to vote for anything that you don't want to vote for, but you need to have your head around this before we get to this stage, and this isn't a time to be explaining how it works when debate's finished. It's just not appropriate to now start laying out where your obligations lie. This is something that I think members need to understand.
It's a process question.
Okay.
If you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
Okay, look, I acknowledge that this increase will make it difficult for some ratepayers. This isn't the whole answer for everybody, but there is a rates remission scheme run by central government and another rates remission scheme run by Hamilton City Council for the most vulnerable. So I'm not saying that to say that it's not going to be hard for some people. I'm just reminding the most vulnerable that those two schemes are in place. The most vulnerable must be looked after. Central government is aware of the pressure that growth councils are under, and they're starting to talk about giving us tools to help us, particularly for growth councils like the UDAs and the SPVs. But until then, we've got to balance our budget and make our books work. So let's be responsible and let's vote to affect our rates, which is the only way that we can close this budget off. So we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, we'll now stop until 2 o'clock for lunch.
Good.
Again.